you've sent us a research paper on evaluating AI chatbots in higher ed, and, well, the title, Higher Education Language Model Multidimensional Multimodal Evaluation Framework. It's a mouthful,
It is a bit of a tongue twister.
but it gets at something really important. With AI chatbots everywhere in education now, how do we know they're actually helping students?
That's the key question this framework is trying to answer. Anyone can make a chatbot that talks, but making one that's accurate, gets the nuances of different subjects, and actually helps students learn, that's a whole other ball game.
So how does this framework work? It sounds like it's combining the technical side with actual human feedback.
Exactly. The researchers at ASU, they knew you need both. So they have these automated assessments, but they also really emphasize human input. For the automated side, they developed what they call the ethical AI engine. Think of it like a fine-tooth comb, really getting into the nitty-gritty of how these chatbots perform on specific criteria.
Okay, so what are some of those criteria? What's this ethical AI engine actually looking at?
One of the big ones is what they call domain-specific accuracy. So it's not enough for a chatbot to just be generally smart, you know? It needs to be an expert in whatever field it's being used in.
Right, so a chatbot for history shouldn't be giving out physics formulas.
Exactly. And it goes even further, testing how well a chatbot can find specific info buried in a ton of text. They call this the needle in a haystack test.
Like a student having to dig through a mountain of research to find that one perfect source.
Precisely. That real-world research skill. And they actually show, like, visualizations of how different chatbots do in this. It's really cool. You can see which ones are good at finding that needle.
It's like they're testing for that real-world research skill, not just general knowledge. But we've been focusing on the automated side of things. You mentioned earlier that human feedback is also a key part of this framework.
Oh, absolutely. You can't forget about the humans. Even with the fanciest algorithms, you can't capture everything about how real students learn, how they interact. So this framework, it has human evaluation built in at 3 different stages.
Okay, walk me through those phases. What happens in each one?
Well, the first one, they call it the sniff test.
The sniff test. Okay, I like that. What are these experts sniffing out exactly?
Basically, they're looking for any obvious problems right off the bat. You get some experts in whatever field the chatbot's supposed to be about. They get to play with it, ask it questions, and see if anything seems off. You know, does it sound right? Are the answers clear? It's a quick check, but important to catch those big issues early on.
Like a gut check from someone who really knows their stuff. If it can't get past them, it's probably in trouble.
Exactly. But if it passes the sniff test, then it goes on to a more serious usability evaluation.
Usability, so what happens there?
This is where they bring in the actual users, students, in this
Yeah.
case, and have them try using the chatbot in a more realistic way. Researchers watch how they get around, how they ask their questions, can they understand the answers, that sort of thing. It's all about making sure the chatbot is actually user-friendly, easy to use even if you're not a tech whiz.
Right, because the smartest chatbot in the world won't help if students can't figure out how to use it. It sounds like this framework really takes that user experience seriously.
It does. And if a chatbot gets through those first 2 phases, then comes the big one, the field experiment.
So this is the real deal, huh? The field experiment. Tell me they don't just, like, release these chatbots into the wild.
Well, not exactly. It's controlled, of course. But basically, yeah, they take the chatbot into a real classroom, have some students use it, some don't, and track how they do.
So it's like comparing, do students learn better with the chatbot or without it? But how do you even measure that? It seems tricky.
It's definitely not just about test scores. No. They look at a bunch of stuff. Did the chatbot actually help students understand things better? Were they more interested in the subject? And a big one, were students happy using it? Did they like the experience?
Makes sense, right? A chatbot might give the right answers, but if it's frustrating to use, students won't get much out of it.
Exactly. And I think what's really cool about this framework, it doesn't just stop at does it work? They're starting to think about the bigger picture too. Like they're even talking about adding in energy efficiency as something to evaluate.
Energy efficiency. No, that's not something I would have thought about with chatbots. So what's the deal there?
Well, it's easy to forget, but these AI things, the more complex they get, the more power they need to run.
Right.
And that energy has to come from somewhere. So even if a chatbot is great for learning, is it also sustainable? That's becoming a question.
Wow, that's a really good point. It's like we want these AI tools to be good in the long run, not just a quick fix. Almost like, you know how people care if their textbooks are printed sustainably? It's part of the whole picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, this paper is about higher ed, but honestly, This framework, it's relevant for anyone thinking about AI and education. These things are showing up everywhere, so we need good ways to figure out if they're actually helping at all levels.
Absolutely. This paper was a lot to take in, you know. We went from the really specific, like, is this chatbot accurate, all the way to these big questions about ethics, sustainability. It really makes you think. It feels like the big lesson here is, as AI gets more common in education, we have to be thoughtful about it, right? We can't just assume it's good or bad. We have to really look closely and choose how we use it.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And it's not over. The conversation keeps going. AI changes all the time, so we have to keep learning and adjusting how we think about it, too.
Such a good point. It's not about finding all the right answers right now, but staying curious, staying in the conversation, figuring out this whole future of learning with AI together, right? Well, that's about all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep those minds engaged.